Welcome to U.S. Security Associates Training Academy. The course on which you are about to embark is one in a series of 10 OSHA courses that lead to your 10-hour OSHA certification. These courses can be taken alone, but if you do choose to pursue your 10-hour OSHA certification, then OSHA requires that all 10 OSHA courses be completed within a 6-month period. Good luck on walking and working surfaces, and let's get started with your training. Let's look at the learning objectives for this unit. The first one is to define the terms floor hole, floor opening, wall opening, standard railing, and standard toe board. The second is to discuss at least 5 requirements to consider in order to avoid walking and working surfaces hazards related to floors, walls, holes, stairways, platforms, ladders, scaffolding, as well as forklifts. Let's take a look at the training sequence for the walking and working surfaces training. We're going to begin with slips, trips, and falls. Then we're going to look at lighting, and then housekeeping, wall hole and wall opening definitions and examples, floor loads, floor hole and floor opening problems, floor hole and floor opening definitions, OSHA regulations regarding floor holes and floor openings, stairways, ladders, scaffolding, forklifts, and we're going to end with data plates. Let's begin with slips, trips, and falls. Walking and working surfaces means you have slips, trips, and falls. On a side note, did you know that 45% of fatal and major injuries in the service sector are caused by slips, trips, and falls? Scary thought. When we're considering slips, trips, and falls, this course is going to tell you what you can do to try to prevent these things from happening in the course of your rounds. We laugh when we look at these pictures, but Homer Simpson has it right. Slips, trips, and falls can be prevented. Okay, the first thing that we're going to do is look at slips, and we're going to define what a slip actually is. A slip occurs when there is too little traction or friction between the shoe and the walking surface. For example, the lady at the restaurant is slipping on the floor, but her hand is heading for the hot grease. The man in the second picture is trying to walk on ice with very slick soles on his shoes. Trips. A trip occurs when a person's foot contacts an object in their way or drops to a lower level unexpectedly, causing them to be thrown off balance. Trips. Some conditions that create trip hazards. Now, these are the conditions that you want to look for when you're out there on the round. Now, you may not be able to change any of these conditions, but you can make your supervisor or the area supervisor aware of what's all going wrong. The first one is housekeeping. If you're out on your round, look to see if there's any cords that could cause somebody to trip, maybe boxes that are blocking a walkway. Also, a change in elevation. Are there steps that are not being labeled? Is there a drop in your elevation that's just people are unprepared for. Make sure that somebody designates that as a hazard. Poor lighting. Are there lights off? Is there lights out? Again, things that you can note in your daily report and let your supervisor know about. Footwear, especially if you're in an area that is known to be slippery. Okay, again, we have to know that the kind of footwear that we're wearing is going to help us, not create a worse situation. Personal factors, okay? Are you hurt? Are you on crutches? Things like this. Environmental factors. Here we go back to the weather, go back to the rain, go back to the ice, anything like that that could create an environmental factor. And task factors. What are you doing with your job, okay? Are you trying to clean up snow off of a sidewalk? Is there ice on the road? Things like this. Things that could cause you to slip, trip, or fall. Okay, now let's look at falls. A fall occurs when you are too far off balance. There are two different ways that we consider falls. One is from the same level, when you fall to the surface you are walking on. And the second is fall from an elevation, when you fall to a level below the one you're walking on. Now, when we're talking about falls from elevations, these are less common, but usually they're more severe than a trip or a fall from the same level. Now, there are numerous risk areas for falls. They range from uneven surfaces such as curbs to ramps or to platforms. Many of the accidents are due to lack of proper fall protection or inattentiveness while working or using that surface. Now, let's look at some conditions that create fall hazards. Stairs, major consideration, especially if you're trying to carry things, big bulky items downstairs. Uneven surfaces. So you're going down a walkway and all of a sudden you hit a ramp, okay? It just kind of catches you by surprise. Ladders. Remember, anytime you are on a ladder, you need 2 points on that ladder. Okay, that means either a hand and a foot, 2 feet, something like that. Okay, at least 2 points on that ladder. The next in the training sequence is lighting. Earlier, I was discussing poor lighting. The reason we tell you about this is because inadequate lighting can hide slip, trip, and fall hazards. And it is associated with the increase in amount of accidents that happen. Maintaining appropriate lighting in workplaces, buildings, at home is an important factor to reducing your accidents. Now, that means that when you are out there, you're doing a round, and you see lights that are out, then you need to note it in your field notes. Make sure it goes down in your daily activity report so it can be followed up on. Flashlights. Every post is going to have a flashlight that security officers are going to need to help maintain. But recently, flashlights have become even better. They use LEDs instead of conventional light bulbs. An LED is a light-emitting diode, and they're much brighter than your conventional light bulbs. Now, some of them are small enough to be able to be carried in your pocket. Let's take a look at the difference from the $18.99 Ever-Ready flashlight to this small 2009 Dorsey LED flashlight. Incredibly different. Now, when it comes to control and preventing poor lighting, there may be nothing that you can do other than write it in your report and let your supervisor and your client know about it. The first one is to perform regular maintenance on lighting systems to reduce flickering and burnt out lights. If you see flickering or burnt out lights, you can't replace the light bulbs, but you can put it in your report so that they can get replaced. Have light switches accessible, preferably near entrances to the rooms. Again, things that you can check when you are doing your rounds. Keep a flashlight in a central location to use in the case of a power outage emergency. My suggestion, get a small enough flashlight that you can carry one with you. You never know when you're going to need it. Diffuse light to reduce glare. Again, this is not something that you're going to be able to do, but you can let management know about it. If a worker faces a window, shades can be used to reduce the glare. Again, you're not going to be able to install shades, but this is something that you could note in your daily activity report. Move slowly where the light is dim. Of course, you do want to do this. We don't want anybody getting hurt while trying to get through a darkened area. Use light, matte finish on walls, ceilings, and floors to reduce the glare. Again, not something that you're going to be able to do, but you can let and inform supervisor so that things can be done. Okay, now let's move on to housekeeping. Housekeeping. Generally, you're not going to be doing the housekeeping around the area, okay? But just remember, effective housekeeping can eliminate some workplace hazards and get a job done safely and properly. Now, poor housekeeping can frequently contribute to accidents by hiding hazards that cause injuries. If the sight of paper and debris and clutter and spills is accepted as normal, then more serious health and safety hazards may be taken for granted, which is why we tell you guys to straighten up. Make sure that the area that you are in is neat, is orderly. Practicing good housekeeping may be the most important measure in preventing slip and trip incidents. Having a clean and organized working environment will not only help reduce the risk of injuries from these type of incidents, but it will also help employees work more efficiently and increase the employee morale. Nobody wants to work in a cluttered, dirty, or potentially hazardous environment. So if you think of it this way, housekeeping is not just cleanliness, okay? It includes keeping work areas neat and orderly, maintaining halls and floors free of any slip and trip hazards, and removing waste materials like paper and cardboard and other fire hazards from your work area. Now, like I said before, although housekeeping may be delegated to custodial staff in most of your work environments, it's everyone's job to keep their own workplace orderly. Now, we think of it in 3-step housekeeping program. 1, plan ahead, okay? Know what needs to be done, when it should be done, and what your workspace should look like when that it is completely finished being picked up. Assign responsibilities. Now, you may, again, not be able to assign responsibilities, but you can definitely make sure that it gets done. Now, of course, each individual should be responsible for cleaning up after themselves, okay? But assigning responsibilities for shared spaces may be helpful just to ensure that the housekeeping duties are being completed. Implement the program. Make sure the housekeeping duties are part of your daily routine. Okay, again, think of it as a part of your post orders, keeping your area neat and orderly. Take a look at this picture. Look at where I've placed these green arrows. As a security officer, it is not your job to go around and pick up the extension cords and pick up the mess that a possible contractor has left behind. But it is your responsibility to inform and educate the people as to what a safety hazard actually is. Now, in this case, you would document your observations as well as report any safety hazards to your supervisor. So housekeeping is not just keeping things clean. It also includes keeping work areas neat and orderly, keeping halls and floors free of any slip and trip hazards, and removing waste and any other fire hazards from your work area, such as trash and paper and things like that. Unsecured wires, major tripping factor. If you are trying to carry large boxes, get a small hand truck, one that you can put those boxes on so that your vision is not being blocked. Now the second picture is wires all over the place. If you're out there doing your round and you come upon this, the first thing that you need to do is get on your radio and let your supervisor know that there are hazards. Simple rules for housekeeping. If you drop it, pick it up. If you spill it, wipe it up. Look where you are going and go where you're looking. As a security officer, anytime you come across an obstruction that appears to be a safety hazard, you need to document it in your daily activity report. If the obstruction appears to be of an immediate safety risk, you not only need to document it, but you need to let your supervisor know about it immediately. Obstructed walkways. You need to be alert for tripping and slipping hazards. Don't run through areas. Keep your hands out of your pockets while you're walking. Keep walkways free of obstructions and hazards. Don't jump over or straddle excavations and holes and open pits. When carrying objects, do not allow them to restrict your vision. Use a hand truck and use instead of trying to block your view. And avoid walking on slippery surfaces. And if you absolutely have to walk on that surface, you need to take extra care. Let's move on to wall hole and wall opening definitions and examples. Okay, now let's look at the difference between a wall hole and a wall opening. A wall hole is an opening less than 30 inches but more than 1 inch high in any wall or partition. A wall opening is an opening of at least 30 inches and 18 inches wide in any wall or partition through which people can fall through. So a wall hole is small. Things can fall through, but not people. A wall opening, on the other hand, people can fall through. Okay, moving on to floor loads. Let's talk about floor loading protection. Your load rating limits should be marked on plates and clearly posted. You have to know that it is against the law to place or cause or even allowed anything to be placed on a floor or a roof of a building or any other structure a load greater than that which that floor or roof is actually approved for. So let's take a look at a typical sign that you may see on a wall. This one says, caution, floor load limit not to exceed 300 pounds per square foot. Have you ever wondered why we have those laws as regards to your floor load limits? Well, this is why. Have you ever walked across a roof and wondered if is it safe to cross? Or have you ever walked across the floor of an older building and felt the floor give a little and start creaking as you walked across it? This is one of the main reasons for floor load protection. That way, if you're moving something heavy across the floor, maybe using a pallet jack, you don't have to worry whether or not you're going to make it all the way across the floor without that floor giving in. So in this picture is an actual picture of a roof where somebody stepped and the roof actually caved in. Okay, now let's take a look at floor hole and floor opening problems. Okay, let's take a look at this picture. You see where the arrow is? On February 16th, 2005, the man who had been working in this area installing handrails and toe boards fell from the same height. After the workday, he and his coworker were putting away his tools. His coworker had gone down to turn off the oxyacetylene tanks and came back to find this coworker had fallen 16 feet to his death. Okay? So this is what we're talking about. Know your areas. Know the areas that need to have handrails, toe boards, so that if you see something like this, you can bring it to your supervisor's attention. Okay, let's talk about unguarded floor openings. In this picture, where the yellow arrow is pointing, is a shaft of 300 feet. This is a 4th floor. In this hole, a man fell, that 300 feet. He was a 57-year-old male electrical mechanical worker, and they were unspooling cables, and he backed up into this hole and fell to his death. So, we're not going to be able to stop the electrical workers from doing their job, but we can, if we see them doing things unsafe, we can bring it to their attention. Put up a temporary barrier so that people do not fall in shafts like this. Okay, let's move on to floor hole and floor opening definitions. Floor openings. An opening measuring 12 inches or more in any floor, platform, pavement, or yard that a person can fall through. Examples of floor openings are hatchways. Hatchways, a good example of a hatchway is if you've ever been on a ship and you go up a ladder, and at the top of that ladder is a door that you have to push open from above you. Okay, that would be a hatchway. Stair or ladder openings, pits, large manholes. Now, a floor hole. What's the difference between a floor opening and a floor hole? A floor hole is an opening measuring less than 12 inches, but more than an inch, in any floor, platform, pavement, or yard where materials can fall through, but not people. Examples of floor holes are belt holes, pipe openings, slot openings. Now, let's define each of these. First is a floor hole cover. A floor hole cover should be capable of supporting without failure at least twice the weight of the employees, equipment, and materials that may be imposed on the cover at any time. So let's say that you're 180 pounds and the equipment that you're carrying is 50 pounds. Your weight plus the equipment should be double that. So 180 plus 50 is 230. So that cover should be able to support 460 pounds. Now let's move on and talk about covers and guardrails. What can you do? The first thing you need to do is ensure that covers and guardrails have been provided for, just again to protect the workers from any hazards of open pits, tanks, or vats or ditches. Guardrails. We put up guardrails to prevent people from falling to a lower level. Now let's take a look at OSHA regulations regarding floor holes and floor openings. Now let's talk about a railing, okay, because there's actually specifics that you need to know about a railing. The standard railing consists of a top rail, a mid rail, and a post. Now, when we're talking about these, the top rail has to be at 42 inches from the surface of the floor. And the mid rail has to be at least 21 inches, okay? So the top rail is 42 inches, the mid rail is 21 inches. Again, let's take a look at this toe board. Remember what I said? A toe board is at least 4 inches in vertical height with not more than a 1/4 inch clearance above the floor level. Again, as you can see, these toe boards are in places where equipment could be knocked over onto the floor below. Open-sided floors, walkways, platform, and runways. Regardless of the height, a standard railing and a toe board must be used to guard open-sided floors, platforms, walkways, as well as runways. Above or adjacent to dangerous equipment, pickling or galvanizing tanks, degreasing units, anything like that. Guarding the floor openings. Standard railing shall be provided on all exposed sides of the stairway opening except at the stairway entrance. Okay, now let's look at open-sided floors and platforms. Open-sided floors and platforms 4 feet or more above the adjacent floor or ground floor must be guarded by a standard railing on open sides except where there is an entrance to a ramp, stairway, or a fixed ladder. Toe boards are required when beneath the open sides a person can pass, there is movement or machinery, or there's equipment which falling material could create a hazard. So when you're using a toe board, you've got a guardrail, but at your foot there is a at least 4 inch toe board that prevents things from falling down and hitting somebody else on the head. Let's take a look at the picture on the left-hand side of the screen. From what you've learned by now, you've probably figured out this is all wrong. Because there is a 4 foot or more drop, there should be a guardrail here. Not only that, because there is a 4 foot or more drop, and things like tools and equipment could fall on people's heads, there should be a toe board in place as well. Now let's take a look at the picture on the right-hand side. Here we've gone ahead and we've installed your railing as well as a mid-rail and a toe board as well. This platform meets all OSHA requirements. In this picture, a railing was installed, but it is definitely not enough. Because of the height of the platform, not only does this need a mid-rail, it needs a toe board as well. Just imagine you're doing your round around here, and the workers are up on the platform with tools. What happens if somebody just happens to drop a portable power screwdriver? It slips through the rail and onto somebody's head. That's why we have toe boards and mid-rails. Okay, let's take a look at some best practices. Now, these are OSHA requirements that you need to ensure are being followed. 1, always use fall protection, right? So again, OSHA requires that fall protection be used anytime you're working near an elevated opening or where there is a danger of falling. You need to protect and guard all openings through which a person may fall, such as a roof opening or anything like this. Keep work areas clear of all extraneous materials and other stumbling or slipping hazards. Now, as you can see in this picture, it's a mess, okay? It is not your job to clean this mess up, but it is your job to ensure that it gets done, okay? So talk to the supervisor, the area supervisor, talk to your supervisor, and let them know what's going on. Establish and train personnel in safe working procedures regarding the removal and installation of handrails and tow boards during maintenance and construction. Again, you're not going to be putting together the handrails and the tow boards and all of this stuff, but you can, when you're out there doing a patrol, make sure that it is done, okay? Make sure that there are handrails, make sure there are tow boards that have been installed. Install temporary barriers, such as a chain or a rope, first, and then remove them when the project is complete. Again, temporary barriers just ensure that people don't fall while other means of protection are being installed, such as handrails and things like this. Workplace examinations should be made by competent persons to identify the hazards associated with construction. Now, you have to realize that you may have OSHA inspections, any other kind of inspectors that come and visit your site. You need to make sure that your supervisor knows that they are there, if they don't already know. If they don't, then inform them, let them know somebody is there to do a visit, who they are, what kind of branch they're coming from, so that your supervisor is aware of what's going on. Stairway floor openings. They have to be guarded by a standard railing on all except both sides, except for at the entrance. Ladderway floor openings must be guarded by a standard railing with a tow board on all exposed sides except at the entrance. Guard the passage through the railing with an offset swinging gate or offset gate to prevent somebody from falling through that opening. So if you're climbing up that ladder, you're going to open it, right? But once you get up there, you need to close it so that people can't fall down from that ladder. Okay, now let's look at stairways. Stairways. Flights of stairs with 4 or more risers must have a standard stair railing or handrail. So what do I actually mean by that? Well, a riser is a stair. So if you have 1 stair, 2 stairs, 3 stairs, 4 stairs, you have to have a standard railing or a handrail. Okay, let's take a look at fixed industrial stairs. Obviously, the treads must be slip resistant. Now, what you have to know is that they also need to be uniform in height and tread width. So if we take a look at this first picture here, where I've got the arrow pointing, this is the tread. And again, the nice thing about these treads is if that hallway is dark, it lights up in green. Now, these stairs also must be able to carry 5 times the expected load with a minimum of 1,000 pounds. And they also have to be a minimum width of 22 inches. Okay, let's look at some fixed industrial stairs violations. First one, as you can see, there's no handrail. Also, the steps themselves are missing. There's frames for them, but there's no stairs. People are going to fall right through. The second picture here, damaged treads, damaged stairwell stairs, no railing on the right-hand side. Again, this would be a complete violation. When we look at ladders, there is an actual maximum length for a step ladder. Your basic step ladder is only 20 feet. Your single rung step ladder, which is only 30 feet. Your double rung step ladder can be extended up to 60 feet. Okay, let's look at rules that go along with portable step ladders. The chief hazard, of course, when you're using a ladder is falling, right? A poorly designed, maintained, and improperly used ladder could collapse under the load, and it caused that person to fall. We don't want that to happen to you. A ladder is an appliance consisting of two side rails joined at regular intervals by cross pieces on which a person could step to ascend or descend. The top of a stepladder is not to be used as a step. And that means that you always have to face the ladder when you're climbing or ascending. Don't go down with your back facing the ladder. Climb and up and down with your facing the ladder. Now, there are other things that we have to consider as well. Ladders that you use to gain access to a roof must extend 3 feet above the point of support. Here, the point of support is your roof, okay? The ladder's got to go up at least 3 feet from the roof. Also, make sure you withdraw from use any ladders that are unsafe. If it's broken, maybe it's missing a handrail or a piece of step, don't use it, okay? Don't allow anybody else to use it. Mark it as defective, as dangerous. Do not use. Also, you're never going to use a ladder in a horizontal position, okay? Ladders are for vertical positions, so it's not going to be used as a scaffold or any type of a platform. Please never use a metal ladder near electrical equipment. Here, they're not even looking and seeing that the overhead lines are right behind them, okay? If they fall backwards, they're going to hit the overhead lines. Okay, let's take a look at some pictures of some people misusing portable ladders. Remember what I said? You cannot use that top step as a step, so please do not use that top of that ladder as a step. Also, look at what this guy's doing. He's barefoot using a metal ladder in a pool trying to fix an electrical light. This guy, not using the right ladder for the job. He's actually using a ladder and using a 5-gallon drum to try to get up to where he needs to work. Okay? Inappropriate. Now, you guys, this is not a ladder. Okay? One tub on top of another tub, on top of another tub is not a ladder. Okay, let's take a little bit and talk about ladder angles. Now, when you're using a ladder, the angle at which the horizontal distance from the top of the roof to the foot of the ladder is 1/4 of your working length, okay? Basically, the best way to tell if you're using that ladder angle appropriately is if you're standing in front of the ladder and you've got your feet at the base of that ladder, reach out your arms with your palms, touch the rung on that ladder, okay, with your hands completely extended. If you can do that and touch the top, that rung of that ladder right in front of you, you are at the correct angle. Okay, those are portable ladders. Let's take a look at fixed ladders. Fixed ladders are permanently attached to fixed structures, such as a building or equipment. Classic example on a tank. Cages or wells are required if the fixed ladder is longer than 20 feet to a maximum unbroken length of 30 feet. In the case of towers, your water tanks, your chimneys, ladder safety devices can be used on ladders over 20 feet in length instead of a cage protection. And what you're looking at here is a cage protection. Okay, now we move on to scaffolding. Unfortunately, Scaffolding accidents kill workers. They do. More than 60 a year are killed by falls of scaffolds. Now, in this picture here, the scaffolding fell onto a city street. But that is why we have to look at these, okay? Now, again, you're not going to be responsible for putting scaffolds up, but you can take a look at the scaffold, just to make sure that it's assembled properly, that people are using the proper precautions when they're putting them together and taking them apart. You can check and see if they have any tie-ins missing, any braces missing, or if what they've got on that scaffold is just too heavy, or maybe it's close to a power line. Let's continue with scaffolding. As you can see in this picture, death did come crashing down. A scaffold was built on a busy Boston street. When it came down, it killed 2 construction workers as well as a doctor that was driving this car on the street. Now, fatal falls from supported scaffolds. From 1992 to 1998, there were a total of 267 deaths. Now, let's see where those deaths actually came from. 217 came from falls. 47 came from collapses of the scaffold. 15 deaths came from dismantling the scaffold, and 6 deaths came from assembling the scaffold. Okay, let's move on and talk about scaffolding. General requirements. Now, again, you aren't going to be putting up scaffolding, but when you're doing your rounds, you can see if anything looks wrong. What general requirements are, first, the scaffolding must be capable of supporting 4 times the maximum intended load. Do not alter or move when you are using it. Protect workers on the scaffolds from overhead hazards. And if that scaffold is higher than 10 feet in use, it needs to have a guardrail and midrail as well as a toe board. Use wire mesh between the toe board and the guardrail if people work or pass underneath. Now, the scaffold must be equipped with an access ladder or the equivalent. Okay, let's move on to forklifts. Okay, let's take a minute and talk about forklifts. First, no joyrides on forklifts. It is a violation of federal law for anyone under the age of 18 to operate a forklift, and anybody over the age of 18 who is not properly trained and certified to do so. Now, these pictures are just pictures that you may see of forklifts that are at your facility. Okay, let's talk about forklift safety, okay? It's just cartoon, right? A forklift, lifting a forklift. Who is lifting a forklift to put a box at the top of this area, right? Just a picture, cartoon? Well, maybe not. Maybe not. Because unfortunately, these people are doing it in real life. This is wrong. If you see something like this, when you are out there in your rounds, you need to stop it, okay? This is going to get people killed. More accidents, okay? You've got to be aware, okay, of people driving, maybe they can't see what's in front of them. Maybe what they're trying to lift is too heavy for that forklift. Or maybe they're trying to back out of an area and they completely go off the loading dock. Now, when you're out there doing your patrol, if you see somebody operating a forklift, what can you do? Well, one, you can make sure that only certified operators use that forklift and that there are no pedestrians around that are allowed to walk around freely where that machinery is actually being used. Also, remind the forklift and forklift drivers to drive carefully, okay? Follow the safety regulations while they are operating that vehicle. Now, OSHA requirements. Training. Training shall consist of a combination of things. 1, formal instruction, your lecture, discussion, interactive computer learning, videotape, written material. Practical training. Demonstrations performed by the trainer and practical exercises performed by the trainee, as well as an evaluation of that operator's performance in the workplace. And the last area we're going to take a look at is your data plates. Let's take a minute and talk about forklift data plates. These are designed to give the employer and the operator information necessary to prevent accidents. Now, with that being said, these data plates are not user-friendly. Okay? As a security officer, you are not being asked to calculate the center mass of items being lifted. What we are asking you to do is to simply verify OSHA's requirements that the data plate does exist on the forklift. Okay, now let's take a look at OSHA standard, because you probably never remember what this number is, but just realize there is an OSHA standard for everything that we do out there, okay? Now, for powered industrial trucks, OSHA has published a list of common violations that they cite people for when they're out there, they're doing an inspection. This regulation requires that all employees train their workers on how to safely operate powered industrial trucks, which is lift trucks, through classroom instruction as well as hands-on evaluation. Failure to meet that standard can actually result in your company having a fine of $70,000. Now, common violations that you see: training, 2,879 people. Not removing unsafe equipment from service, 605 citations. Daily inspections not performed, 384. Data plates and markings not in place or legible, 143. Unauthorized modifications or data have been not reflected on the data plate, which is 140. Unauthorized repairs or not removed from service, 118. Battery maintenance or charging area violation, 93. Unattended truck not parked correctly, 91. Not slowing down or sounding a horn at an intersection, 63. Unauthorized person on a forklift or a truck, there's 48. Now, number of citation, 4,564. Now, again, you are not going to be out doing this. You're not going to be giving people citations, but these are things that you can look for when you're out there doing your rounds. Now, in summary, slips, trips, and falls constitute the majority of all general industry accidents. OSHA standards for walking and working surfaces include requirements for housekeeping, guarding, floor and wall openings and holes, industrial stairs, and ladders. Keeping working surfaces clean and dry and uncluttered can actually prevent a lot of workplace accidents. Now, these are some references that you can write down. I'm not going to go into all of them, but just know that if you pull up the 29 CFR subpart D, this is where your basic standards are, okay? But you can always come back and look at this reference and check it out just to look up anything else. Bottom line, you guys, when you gamble with your safety, you bet your life.